This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 94 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we give you some tips and ideas of how you can chase your own big idea and dream and create the world you want to live in. Our guest on today's episode is Whitney Nicely. More about Whitney in a moment. Our guest on today's episode is Steve Loez. He is a speaker, a business expert in the world of human resources, and the founder of Qualigence International. He has spent over 20 years in the human resources industry and is a highly rated speaker on entrepreneurial best practices and talent management and strategy. He has worked with the leadership teams for companies like Cisco, Starbucks, Whirlpool, Coca-Cola, Miller, Walgreens, and many others. He has been featured on places like Bloomberg, CNN Money, Detroit Free Press, and Fortune magazine. In the episode, we talk about a lot of really cool stuff, like finding the true DNA of a potential candidate for your team, principles of production and purpose. We also talk about how you need to embrace differences to increase business outcomes with diversity and inclusion. Make sure to check out our episode with Steve Loez this Friday. If you are new to the Jumblethink podcast, or maybe you've been listening to it for a while but haven't done it already, make sure you swing on over to your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Click that follow or subscribe button, and you'll never miss another Jumblethink episode. You can also swing on over to jumblethink.com, find many of the links to where you can find our podcast, and subscribe. Now, let's jump into today's episode with Whitney Nicely. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host, and I'm so excited that you've joined us for another amazing episode of the Jumblethink podcast. Our guest today is Whitney Nicely. She is a real estate broker and coach. She also is a sought-after speaker. She went from 0 investments or strategies to 19 houses, 19 apartment units, and 7 chunks of land in less than 3 years. She did this all by building a system that automates the process. So you can go on autopilot and build an incredible business, an investment portfolio of real estate to help you really reach your goals. Beyond her own investment portfolio, she also travels the U.S. speaking and teaching on her simple strategies and meeting with other successful real estate investors, all while managing and investing in new properties. Since 2016, she has trained hundreds of future real estate investors to grow their portfolios, collect checks, and achieve financial freedom. She's been featured on places like Realtor.com, Atlanta CW, U.S. News, Entrepreneur on Fire, ABC, and Real Estate Journal. You can find her and check her out at whitneynicely.com. We have the links in the episode notes so you can swing on over and check them out there. Let's welcome today's guest, Whitney Nicely, to the Jumblethink podcast. Whitney, I am super excited to have you on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks. This is going to be fun.
You have so much energy, and you can just tell that you bubble joy and are a fun person. Tell us a little bit about your background and maybe how you view the world.
I have to tell you that I am the 4th generation entrepreneur in my family. When my great-grandfather started trucking in 1939, though, we were just small business owners. We weren't entrepreneurs back then. So the entrepreneur gene is very much in my blood, and our bucks always came from trucks, except we bought real estate on the side. So I grew up as a real estate investor's kid.
Oh, wow.
I grew up knowing that there was going to be money in the mailbox every month. I didn't even realize there was bills in the mailbox until I was like in my 20s. And so, that's how I grew up. I know everybody says, oh, it's awesome. You can work for your mom and take off time whenever you want to and blah, blah, blah. No. It's nothing like that. When you work for the family company, you have all the pressure of 3 generations before you, and you don't want to be the one that screws it all up.
Are you still carrying on the family trucking business, or have you moved on to your own adventures?
Yeah, I've moved on. I'm not trucking anymore. I go and visit and, give my 2 cents for whatever it's worth whenever I'm up there eating lunch with Mom, but I don't truck every day. No, I'm all in real estate all the time now.
That's really, really cool. Recently, we had a guest on who is, I think, 3rd-generation entrepreneur, and they talked about it being a blessing and a curse from different angles and perspectives of their experience in being into entrepreneurship. How has that been for you?
There is a lot of blessings and a lot of curses. And one of the blessings that I had, my mom was interested in real estate. She was always a real estate investor. So when I started getting into real estate and I wanted to go, for a long lunch and go by the tax sale and try to buy some land, she was totally in for that.
Yeah.
When I wanted to go bid on a property at an auction, a regular, absolute auction, she was totally down with going and hanging out. And that was a great way to spend our afternoon or morning. And then we just go back and truck in the rest of the day. So I was very blessed that my mom was also a real estate investor. And on the curse side, though, when my mom invests in real estate, she still does this. She's a kind of old, slow, boring investor where she saves up a bunch of money and then buys whatever she can and rents it out. And eventually she gets her money back. She has, no plans, no strategy. She just throws spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks.
Okay.
And she's been doing that so long that she's really good at it now.
Yeah.
But I needed a strategy, and I needed structure, and I needed formulas, and I needed facts, and my mom couldn't teach me that. And so when I finally did clue in that I wanted to become an investor, I started the conversation. I asked Mom one day, she was making the deposits with the rent checks, and I was like, how do I get money every month? And she, where some investors would have been like, oh, well, we need to talk about the cash flow, we need to talk about Robert Kiyosaki, we need to talk about this, we need to talk about ROI, and blah, blah. And my mom was just like, well, go figure it out. You got to buy something first.
Wow. And that's probably how she learned, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. Her dad taught her, but definitely just by her riding around on the coattails, not because he sat her down and explained stuff. They just figured it out. And
I think that's something I'm big into personality traits. I'm big into the Myers-Briggs and 16 personalities, now Discover Your Gift, Strength Finder stuff. And it sounds like part of this is, she was bent to learn that way. She kind of figured it out as she went. For you, the approach to learning seems like, based on your personality, is just a little bit different. And she wasn't able to give that to you, but you were able to figure it out. So tell us a little bit about that journey of discovery and that journey of learning it when you had to look elsewhere and get your answers answered, or your questions answered.
Yeah, well, I'd asked Mom, how do we know if this is a good deal? How do we know that we're going to make any money? How do we know that we're going to be able to rent this? And she was like, we just go with it, and whatever happens, happens. And you can't do that, I couldn't do that. So I joined the Real Estate Investors Association and went to start hanging out with other real estate investors that I wasn't related to. And one night they had a separate talk about lease options. And the guy that was leading the talk, I'll tell you this too, I'd been investing like my mom for about a year at this point. Okay, I bought 2 pieces of land, and I bought a house, and I ran out of money, and then I found another house I wanted to buy. So I borrowed my brother's savings account and told him he was going to be my partner, and we were going to buy houses, and it was going to be fine. Don't ask me any questions. Yeah. And so I'd blown through my life savings and my brother's life savings, and then I joined the RIA meeting. I ran out of money. I went broke trying to get rich. Okay. Right? And I was at the RIA meeting, and the president, Victor, was like, hey, we're going to have a special presentation on lease options, and it's going to be $75. And I remember him talking to me. He came up to me after the meeting, and he was like, I really want you to come to this. And I was like, well, I don't have $75. And I'm a real estate agent. I bought 2 houses. I buy land. I'm already an investor. I don't need to know anything else about real estate. I'll figure it out. Right? Okay, yeah. Because I'm 27 at this point and very sure of myself. Yeah. And he was like, no, Whitney, I think you're going to like it. And if you will come, if you don't learn anything, I'll give you your $75 back. Wow. And I was like, all right, old man, I'll be there. Get my money back, too. Yeah. And I got there within 15 minutes. The guy presenting that, it was a Thursday night. I went after work, and he made more money in the first 15 minutes. He went through like just 2 or 3 of his deals, and he was making more money on these 2 or 3 deals they just presented that I was going to make in like 3 years at the trucking company.
Wow.
And he was doing all of this with no money, no credit, no banks, and he was loving life, and he was having a great time with it. He still had a job. He just did this on the side. And so 15 minutes into that presentation, he mentioned Ron LeGrand, and that's who he'd learned from. So 15 minutes after I heard about lease options, I saw 3 different properties this guy had been working on. I didn't know him from Adam. He mentions Ron LeGrand. I get on my phone and I put a boot camp on my credit card for $3,000 that night before I left.
Yeah.
I mean, I dove straight head first into it.
Yeah.
And there was no looking back. So that was the Knoxville class was in November. I went to Ron's first event in December. I went back in February, and 2 weeks after I got back from the second one, I had my first contract and closed. I made $15,000 on May the 13th, and so I had all of my investment money back. I had a mentor paid for like the next 6 months, and I ended up doing 14 deals in the first 9 months. And what's funny is I love this story because it was November that I went to that first Thursday night meeting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
By the time the next November came around, I'd closed 14 lease option deals and made like $135,000. From 1 year ago, I didn't have $75 to learn how to do this, and the next year I'm rocking and rolling with it.
Wow. What year was that all this happened?
That was 2014, November of 2013 through November of 2014.
Wow. So you've been doing this for a couple years now. You've gotten your legs on this. This isn't a flash, kind of get rich scheme. This is actually something that you've lived. It's something that's real. It's something that you've worked the nuts and bolts out of it, and you've come up with solutions, strategies that work for you. And
I'll tell you, I've gotten bumps and bruises. I have been through the nitty-gritty, and I won't say that I've always come out on top, but I've made money. I've been able to keep 19 houses. I've got 19 apartments now. I've got 7 different chunks of land, and I have an absolute blast. I've got enough money coming in from my real estate portfolio after 3 years that if my husband gets a consulting gig in Tampa, I can just go and hang out and be a hotel housewife because I made my money already.
Wow.
I mean, I worked my tail off. I will tell you, I worked my tail off for a solid 2 years.
Okay.
But after 2 years, I'm 33 and basically retired. Whereas, most people are going to work 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And then kind of be retired.
You mentioned your mom in this process. What's your mom's feedback and just reaction to seeing how you went from like, Mom, how do I do this? And she's like, go figure it out. And to now where you're like, you've got strategies, you've got systems that work for you. What's her reaction to all this?
My mom will tell you she has no idea what I do. She has no idea how I have more houses. She's been investing since 1978. I have more houses than she does. I have apartments. She doesn't have any apartments. But my mom is so awesome. She's got a landfill.
Okay.
And a bunch of truck workshops, a bunch of warehouses. My mom's got some really cool stuff, but I do have more houses than she does.
That's cool.
So she'll tell you, and my dad will tell you he has no idea what I'm doing. My dad loves to give me business advice, unwarranted, unasked for, and I just have to sit there and, say, okay, Dad, thank you. I appreciate it. Bye.
I think that sounds like the job of every parent, though.
I know, and I know he does it to protect me. He's not trying to tell me that I don't know what's going on. He's just trying to protect me because he's my daddy.
Yeah, and that's what dads do.
Yeah. So I just, sometimes he makes a really good point, and sometimes I realize that he's not my target audience.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it.
Well, I want to dive a little bit into what you do because we've had some guests on in the real estate space. Not many, actually, but we've had a couple. And, of course, you see all of the HGTV commercials when you're flipping through the channels like, oh, you're going to flip this house, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And there's so many different strategies. Raw land investment, commercial investment, and, flipping houses, all of these different strategies. What is it that you do? I
mostly take over payments from people who don't want this house anymore.
Okay.
I find sellers, a lot of my sellers. Okay, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Do you know anybody that has a mortgage on their house?
Yeah, lots of people.
Do you know anybody that maybe they bought a house when they were starting out and then they outgrew it, but they didn't sell it, they kept it. And they bought another house and moved to the other house and they rented the first house?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody that's done that maybe 2 or 3 times where they've ended up 3 or 4 houses down and they've got 2 or 3 houses kind of in a bridge program behind them and they got renters in it?
Yeah, a couple people, yeah.
Okay, well, I find people just like that, okay? And most people know people like that.
Yeah.
You know? And I find people like that, but when I find them, usually a couple different things have happened. Sometimes maybe they're on their 3rd or 4th house and maybe, you know, their kids are busier now. Maybe they're trying to climb the corporate ladder now. Maybe their parents are getting older and sicker. Maybe there's a parent living with them, but there's just a whole lot of life going on, right? I mean, you know people like that too, right?
For sure.
So what happens to these people, one of their tenants moves out of one of their houses. One of their renters moves out of one of their houses. And they are so busy with their life and their kids and their parents and their job that sometimes they just want to put blinders on and pretend that they don't need to go back to that house to see what it was, see what's done to it. Maybe they just start making the payments on an empty house. And they do this for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, like no big deal. Yeah. And then it turns into a year, and then it turns into 2 years and 3 years. People will make payments on an empty house just because they don't want to go deal with it. Or maybe they do go and see that it just needs paint and carpet, no big deal, but they don't have it budgeted to paint and carpet this rental house. Yeah. And maybe they just don't want to deal with an agent to list it and sell it. Maybe they don't want to go through the process and the struggle of selling it. Maybe they just want to live their life and not worry about this. But then they know every single month that they're going to be making that payment. So I find people in that kind of position in life where they're living their life, they're doing everything that they can, but there's just this house kind of gnawing at them. Yeah. And I come through and say, don't worry, I'll take over the house as it is, whatever's wrong with it. I'll start making the payments in about 3 months. That way they have a light at the end of the tunnel. They only need to make 3 more payments and they're done. Right. And I take care of the problem for 5 or 10 years. They don't have to worry about a thing. They never have to go back. And some of these people have moved on, moved states away, and they physically don't want to go back to this house. Yeah. And so that's the best way I can explain who I buy houses from and, you know, what kind of houses these are. These are fine houses in great neighborhoods. They just aren't loved anymore.
Well, and it sounds like what you're doing in a lot of ways is taking a burden that is unwanted off the shoulders of someone who is in a different season of life. And what was good 5 years ago, 10 years ago might not be the right fit for them now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can usually give them, you know, a lot of times I buy the house for what they owe on it. Wow. Sometimes people owe more than it's worth. Okay. And so they can't list it or they'd have to pay the agent. Yeah. And I'm an agent too. I'm just like not a regular agent. Yeah. And or, you know, maybe there's something else going on. You know, sometimes people, you probably don't, your friends aren't like this, but there are people out there that will get a house and they'll pay it down and then they'll roll their student loans or their boat payment into the house. Okay. And suddenly they owe more than it's worth. Yeah, yeah. Second, third, fourth mortgages and things like that. I can handle those also because I'm going to get 10 or 15 or 20 years to pay this thing off. Yeah. And all I need when I get this payment, all I really need is $300 a month. I need to be whatever my payment is for my seller because I'm not assuming the loans, I'm taking them over. Yeah. Control without ownership. Yeah. And I need if my payment is $900, I need to be able to rent this place for $1,200 or $1,300 a month. I need $300 a month. All right. And if you do, or if I do, one deal a month for 2 years, and I average $300 a month, then after 2 years, I've got 24 houses paying me $300 a month. That's $7,200 a month. Okay. Most people, and if I do this for 3 years, I'll break $10,000 a month. I'll be in the 6-figure club for 3 years of buying houses. Okay. And most people, a lot of people aren't making 6 figures in their job, much less part-time investing in houses. Yeah. The other cool thing about this is every time somebody moves into one of my houses, I don't just get the $300 a month. I get 10 or 15 or sometimes $40,000 when people move into these houses. Okay. How's that? Well, that's the non-refundable option fee that they give me. Okay. People are taking ownership of the house. I'm staying in the middle so that my seller knows their payments are getting made.
Yeah.
But then people give me money, give me good money, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. They move into my house, and I give them a year or two to make the payments while they're there. They can improve the house. They can paint it. They can, do whatever they need to. They can have their baby showers and their Christmases, and they can take pride in it because I'm going to be working with them on trying to buy this house and get a mortgage in a year or two.
For a lot of people, they hear real estate investment and they just go, I don't have the kind of money that is necessary for this. But it sounds like there are strategies to help overcome those obstacles so that people can jump into this world because they've heard real estate's such a good investment. You should be looking into this. And they've looked into it. They just don't know how they're going to get started. It sounds like there are some options here for that.
I mean, this is totally perfect. In this great example I gave you, I never gave my seller any money. I didn't go to the bank. I didn't cash them out.
Yeah.
And you said it earlier, I found somebody with a problem and I solved it.
Yeah.
It's like Ice Ice Baby. If you got a problem, I'll solve it. But that's what it's about. And that's what entrepreneurship's about. It's finding a problem and fixing it and being able to make money with it.
Yeah.
And my sellers are happy for me to make money because I'm taking their problem away. They don't care.
Yeah.
My buyers are happy for me to make money because I'm taking their problem away too. They can't just go get a loan, but they don't want to rent. They want to be putting some money towards something. They want to take some pride in ownership.
Yeah.
And this is how they do that.
Yeah. I work in a completely different sphere. I've owned a web development company for years, and people always ask a similar question when they say, how have you built a successful business in the past? How have you made it happen? And I said, well, there's only one question people really want me to answer. They don't want to know what platform I'm building it on. Some people do, but most don't. They don't really care about, technology of the website that we're building. What they care about is it going to solve their problem? And I think that's what business is really about a lot of times, is coming in and saying, you've got a problem, we have a way to solve it, and you just need to trust us because we have a roadmap to make your life better.
It also helps that you've been there. I've been a new investor.
Yeah.
I know what it was like to go to the investor meeting and everybody have a portfolio, and I was the only one there going, well, I'd like to get started. I've been in those shoes. And I think people like that also when, I can show them the nuts and bolts. I can tell them my stories. I can help guide them through their own negotiations and strategies and things. But they have to go out there and do that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you were first starting out, you had this legacy you were carrying on. We talked a lot about that at the front end of the interview. But what were the emotions you had when you started stepping into this? Because I know a lot of people when they're starting a business, whether it's stepping into an investment type strategy or whether it's starting a brick and mortar store, there is a common thread of fear. What were your emotions like when you started this process?
I am kind of a trial and error girl.
Okay.
I like to get in, and before I really understand something, I have to live through it.
Yeah.
And my mom has always been a huge encourager, and she has always encouraged me to really, figure it out, bulldoze through it.
Okay.
And so I didn't sit around and worry about what was going to happen if I didn't make it. I didn't worry about, I didn't fear if I was going to look like an idiot. I just didn't sit around and worry about that kind of thing. I focused on the problem that I had, and the problem that I usually had, and I still do sometimes, is I need to talk to some sellers.
Yeah.
And if I'm not talking to sellers, I'm not going to be buying any houses.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that instead. I mean, the fear, I don't think I really paid that much attention to it because there was so much to do.
Yeah, yeah. You're focusing at the task at hand that moved you forward instead of at the emotion that was holding you back.
And when I remember being in college and I was having a rough time and, what if I don't graduate? What if this happens? What if that happens? And my mom said, let's just not play the what if game.
Yeah.
And so I just don't play the what if game.
Yeah.
Because that'll get us in a rabbit hole full of nothing.
That's good. That's good.
And what if none of that ever happens and then we waste our time worried about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just not play the what if game, and let's just assume everything's going to be hunky-dory, and if something goes wrong, we'll deal with that when it happens.
That's good. Yeah. You mentioned one of your biggest struggles starting out was finding and getting out there and finding sellers or people that are trying to get this out of their hair and into somebody else's management, if you will. How do you overcome that obstacle? How do you find people that want your help to remove the noose of or the thing holding them back? How do you find those people, and where do you start your process in that?
You can start it online. There's a website called Zillow.
Yeah.
You've heard of it.
I have. Use it quite a bit.
I know. I love it. So the Big Z is amazing.
Yeah.
And in there, you can search for people trying to sell their house by owner.
Okay.
There's also Craigslist.
Yeah.
Another big search. You just type in real estate for sale by owner near me.
Yeah.
And it pops them all up. So you can start by calling all those people. You can send out yellow letters to people that are absentee owners, so they don't live in the house that they own.
Yeah.
You can go to meetings. You can get business cards. But I'll tell you, the thing that gave me the biggest boost in activity was I was in a little county, and most little counties have little festivals. They have little events. They have, Strawberry Festival or Tomato Festival or whatever, and businesses sponsor booths.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to be in a county that the next event they were having was a business expo.
Okay.
And they already had 3 or 4 different real estate agents that had rented booths, but I was a real estate agent, but I was coming in as a real estate investor.
Okay.
So I went, and for 2 days, I talked to everybody that walked by my booth. I did not stay behind my table. I got right out there in the middle of the aisle and talked to everybody that came through and told them that I was buying houses. And I probably went through 100 lead sheets in 2 days,
wow,
which is a huge amount of sellers to talk to. And out of that weekend, I think I bought 3 houses and made $30,000 or $40,000.
Wow.
Just from one weekend of working and talking. And what was great about that is I was so immersed in it. And that's what people, when you start a business or you start anything, it's really easy to get distracted. It's really easy to say, oh, this is hard. I'm just going to go back to whatever was comfortable. But I jumped in, completely immersed myself in the deep end, literally, like no idea. And I just figured it out that weekend. I figured out how to talk to people. I figured out how to get more information out of them. And I mean, I was talking to people like as they were walking by, and getting very personal, what's your mortgage payment? How much do you owe on your house? And they're just giving me these answers. We're setting up appointments, and I figured it all out on the spot as we went. Jump in, the water will be fine. You'll swim.
So sometimes it's just getting in and then responding to the issues that you have as you come along. You talk about here you had questions that you needed answered that you didn't have before you started. So once you hit them, you figured out an answer. Yep.
And you keep going, and you figure out how to say certain things so that people will give you a better response or give you more of a response.
You have some great resources for people who might be listening to this going, okay, this sounds good, but I'm still, I don't know what this means. I want to get involved with it. How do I do it? Tell us about your program and also that cheat sheet you have.
So I have a program called First Deal Done Fast, and it is designed to help newbies, new investors, get their first deal done fast.
Which is always a great goal to have.
Yes. One of my all-stars right now, she's holding the record. She joined me in September, and by the end of November the 1st, so just like 7 weeks, she closed 2 different deals and made $12,000.
Wow.
And I am tickled pink with her. She definitely got her first 2 deals done super fast.
Yeah.
But, we can check that out. One thing, though, is this cheat sheet that I have. And I don't know why I call it a cheat sheet. It's like 22 pages.
That's a cheat book.
Yeah. And so it's going to tell you how to get started, how to talk to sellers, how to find sellers, and really, tell you a little bit more about me, too, because some people hear me and then they think, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so you can get that at getyourfirstdeal.com.
I want to step back. You talked about you have, I think it's like 19 houses now, 19 apartment units, 7 chunks of land. These are different types of properties. You've got commercial mixed in with residential. You've got land with apartments. And you hear so many people come into the real estate investment space and they go, oh, just do this or just do this. How do you respond to that kind of approach? And is there strategy differences between these, or do you find that your strategies work across different types of real estate, different spaces, different needs?
Well, there's lots of different ways, and we could take 18 different directions with anything, right?
Yeah.
But the basics you have to find a house, you have to buy it, and then you have to sell it.
Yeah.
Or you have to find a property, you have to buy it, and then you have to sell it. And those are the 3 steps to getting a deal done.
Okay.
Now you can go, 18 different ways. You can take tons of detours. You can make it as complicated as you want to, or you can get on the highway and shoot straight to your goal. So I tell people to start small and start where they're comfortable. You're going to have to talk to a lot of people. You're going to have to drive around, or, some of my students are in California and they invest in Mississippi and Ohio and Colorado. And sometimes they never even see the houses that they buy.
Okay.
So you don't always have to drive around and see them, but I'm a hands-on kind of girl and I like to see them.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
But one of the things that when I started, I bought a piece of land. Okay. And it was at an auction. But the second piece I bought, I got to tell you the story because I paid $1,500 for it. And that's a lot of people's excuses. They don't have the money to get started. Well, most of us have $1,500 that we can spare on an investment. I see people asking for more than that on Bitcoins. Yeah. Whatever that is. But anyway, so $1,500, I bought a piece of industrial land. So I've got it all. I've got agricultural, residential, commercial, and industrial. And if you're not familiar, industrial is the top of the totem pole in the classifications of real estate. Yeah. So I got a 1/2 acre piece of industrial land in the city of Knoxville for $1,500. Wow. And I went to my neighbor and told him, I found out I was downtown flirting with the codes inspectors just to see what was going on one day. I mean, I was down there just talking to them. And they told me that this piece of property I bought, I also got the driveway for it. It used to be a road that the city owned, but now it was a driveway. And in 1992, when I was in the 2nd grade, way before I was investing in real estate, the city decided they didn't want this road anymore, so they gave the right side of it to me, my property that I bought. Yeah. And they gave the left side of it to my neighbor, who's a Fortune 500 company. Yeah. So armed with this information and nothing else, I went marching down to my neighbor's office and, busted in there like Kool-Aid and said, "Hey, you're driving on my land and I want to get some rent for it." Yeah. Because he had trucks and they had to get to the back of the warehouse and they just drove on this driveway. And he was like, "No, little real estate girl, that's not possible. This is our road. We've had it for a long time. No, just go away." Yeah. So 2 weeks later, his secretary called me back and she said, "Miss Nicely, we have had the property on Prosser Road surveyed, and it turns out we're driving on your driveway, and we'd like to rent that from you every month." Yeah. And I said, "Okay, well, how much would you like to give me?" And she said, "We'll pay you $250 a month." Okay. And, that contract will be good for forever. Yeah. And I said, "Well, there's a couple things. I've had this property for like 5 or 6 months at this point, and I'd like back rent since the time that I've owned it." Yeah. And she said, "Okay, no problem." I mean, this is a big company. $250 a month is no big deal to them.
Yeah, for sure.
And I said, "Another thing is I don't want to be responsible for the maintenance of this driveway. Your trucks are driving on it. If there's a pothole or if a tree falls or whatever, I want you to fix it. Don't call me." And she said, "Okay, that's fine. We can handle that." Yeah. And I said, "And last, I want you to pay my property taxes on this." And she said, "Well, how much are they?" And I was like, "I think they're like $50 a year." Yeah. And she was like, "Okay, we can do that too." So I basically negotiated a triple net lease. So they're paying my taxes, they're paying the maintenance, and they're paying rent. And I am free and clear. The first check I got was for a little over $1,500 because it included some taxes. Yeah. So I had all my money back in 6 months. Now I'm making $250 a month with no overhead, nothing to worry about. And I've had this property for 3 years. But the best part is that's the driveway. I get $250 a month off the driveway. Right. I still got the land sitting over there, right? Yeah. So I found a guy that needed a place to store dumpsters. When you flip a house and there's a dumpster that sits in the driveway, you throw all your trash in it? Absolutely. Well, when those dumpsters aren't on a job site, they have to sleep somewhere. Yeah. And they can't just sleep in your neighborhood. Yeah. They have to be on an industrial piece of land. And I happen to have an industrial piece of land. Right. And so I found a guy that owns a bunch of dumpsters, and he pays me $500 a month for his dumpsters to sleep on my ground. Yeah. So I make $750 a month on an initial $1,500 investment. Wow. With no plans or strategies when I bought it. But I kept going, and I figured it out, and now we're kicking tail and taking names.
That's cool. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. I mean, one of the things that stands out to me as you're sharing that story is that one of the greatest traits that you have, or one of the greatest strengths, is creativity and thinking outside the norm or outside the box when you face these issues. How did you, how do you approach problems like this? How do you come up with the solutions and think in a creative way where most people would maybe be very literal in the problem solving?
Well, you have to look at the problem and then boil it down to the basics.
Okay.
You have to get really simple with it. So basically what we're saying here is that, depending on the situation, basically what we're saying is I got somebody making payments on an empty house and they don't want to do that. Well, how can I fix that? Well, I could take over their payments and that solves their problem.
Right.
Or we can look at it and say, I bought a piece of land. I don't know what to do with it, but I'm going to talk to people who might have some insider information that is public information and see what they think I could do with it.
Right.
And then take action on it. I mean, I directly left the codes inspector's office, went straight to my neighbor's office before I had time to think about it and think about what he might say and think about this and think about that. I took action. I take massive, massive action. And I think that is the key. I will create a gigantic mess.
Yeah.
When I'm cooking, I create a terrible mess. My husband hates it because he goes through and cleans up after me. But that's kind of how I am in life, too. I go out, I make a mess, and I figure it out, and the chips are going to fall where they want to.
One of the strengths about what you're doing is you're creating recurring income. You're creating automation. You're creating systems. How do you approach that and have good systems that give you the freedom to do what you want? When you mentioned your husband goes out and does a speaking thing and you get to go along and hang out and be a part of that. How have you created these systems, and how do these systems, these automation tools, really help you have the freedom that you want to create the life you want?
So the best thing that I ever did was I started training my tenant buyers. Okay. I've seen and heard stories of other landlords who hover, kind of like helicopters. They want to drive by the property all the time. They want to let you know that you didn't mow it or that your trash can's still out, or, you know, they kind of hover.
Yeah.
I avoid my houses at all cost.
Yeah.
I don't want to go by there. I don't want to hover. I don't want to see what you're doing. I want to train these people to become homeowners.
Yeah.
They're buying these houses from me. They're not regular renters. They actually want to be here forever. They want to buy it. And part of that is, you know, they have to deal with things that go wrong. If the toilet gets clogged and you have a mortgage, you don't call the bank to come fix it.
That's right.
So don't call me. This is a practice run.
Yeah.
Just fix it. Call the plumber.
Okay.
Another thing is when potential buyers are calling me, I don't do this on purpose, but I'm a little bit hard to get a hold of. Okay. Because I'm busy. I got other things going on. Sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll text you back. Sometimes I'll, you know, if you email me, I'll email you back. I'll Facebook message, like whatever it is, but I'll get back to you eventually. Yeah. That way, if there is a problem or if we're working together, they don't expect me to respond immediately. Yeah. Whatever's going on isn't my emergency. Right, right. And I let people know that they're working on my timeline here. Yeah. We will do things the way I do things, not the way that you've done things in the past. Yeah. And training your tenants is huge because they can drive you crazy with every little anything. Yeah. But even on my apartments, I let them know that don't bother me. Text me during working hours. I'll get the handyman to come out there. Yeah. You know, like let me know if he doesn't, and I'll send him another text message. But you don't bother me, and I'm not going to bother you. Right. You know, live your life, do whatever you need to. And some of my tenants, they, you know, when they're signing a lease with me, especially I got a triplex and I self-manage it. We've got 16 units and I don't. That's like adult daycare. So I've got a property manager for that one. Right. But in my triplex, I had one of the guys that signed a lease with me in the spring. He was like, so you live around here? And I was like, nope. Wow. He was like, so how often do you come by? And I was like, whenever I'm leasing the place. He was like, so you're not going to like peek in the windows while I'm at work and see? And I was like, nope. And he was like, all right, cool. Yeah. And he has been amazing. Yeah. He will text me because I give him the respect that he wants and needs. You know, he's a grown man. He doesn't need me peeking in the windows. Yeah. And so he will text me and say, apologize. Whitney, I am so sorry, but I got a new job and I don't get paid for 2 weeks. I need to pay you extra because I'm not going to have it in on time. And like, that is what you want.
Yeah.
That brings up another point. I don't collect rent. I give people my checking account number.
Yeah.
And they go deposit their rent.
Yeah.
And if it's after 5 on the 5th and the bank is closed and it's time stamped, then they don't get credit for getting their rent in on time.
Okay.
And so my tenants put their rent in a checking account. My tenant buyers in my houses, they get a double whammy. If they're late on their payments, then I don't give them any credit towards their purchase price for that month.
Oh, wow.
People will skip their cigarettes and beer on a Friday to pay me my rent early.
Yeah.
So that they get credit towards their purchase price in a couple years.
Yeah.
They do not, and that's part of training people. They do not want to be late.
Yeah.
They respect me. They know I respect them. And so they do what they're supposed to do in this agreement.
Yeah.
And those are the best systems you can have in place. Let people be adults. Give them their responsibility to be real adults.
That's good. That's good. A lot of people, one of the objections they're going to give you is, I have a job, I'm busy, I've got my family life and everything like that. How can they do this? How can they create their side hustle, if you will? How can they start creating their own business, whether it's in real estate or not, and feel like they're not robbing something else, or how it can be a stepping stone to freedom for them?
So when I started investing, I had 4 jobs, 4 full-time jobs at the trucking company.
Yeah.
I was flipping furniture on Craigslist. I was flipping dump trucks also. And then I started buying houses. And one thing that you have to do to create more time, people aren't going to like this, Mike, but you've got to stop watching TV.
Okay.
You've got to stop watching Sons of Anarchy or whatever it is that's popular. What's that show right now that everybody's watching?
This Is Us. That's a big one.
This Is Us. Yeah. You got to quit that. You got to quit the news.
Yeah.
You got to quit. I mean, quit watching TV and you'll be amazed at how much more time you have every single week.
Right.
To do things that are going to get you to a place where you can watch TV all day if you want to.
Yeah.
Or you can wait till you hit the retirement home and then watch TV all day.
Right.
Because you don't have squat else to do. While you're young and you've got some get up and go about you, and whether you take the kids to look at houses with you or not, go do it, okay? I had 4 jobs. I had 2 part-time hustles when I added my real estate thing. My boyfriend lived in Atlanta, 3 hours away. He had kids that did travel ball. I mean, I did the whole thing. And I had to give up some things. I couldn't go to dinner with my girlfriends sometimes because I had to go talk to sellers. I had to make a deal.
Yeah.
But, now looking back, those girlfriends of mine at the time aren't my friends anymore because they're still doing the same thing they were doing 3 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm on a totally different level now.
Yeah.
And I want to hang out with other people who are doing things that I want to do now.
Yeah. That's good.
So you got to quit TV, and sometimes you're going to have to quit your friends.
Okay. That's good advice.
New friends will come along, though, and they are amazing.
I think before we dive into our rapid fire questions, I have one last final question, and that's when we think the world of real estate, we think of licenses and education and everything you have to do. Getting into this, do you need real estate license? What kind of education do you need? What is the cost of entry when it comes to those kind of things?
I have a real estate license. I have an auctioneer's license. I'm a general contractor. I love licenses. But there is not a license in America as a licensed home buyer.
Okay.
It doesn't exist. And getting a real estate license and going through real estate school will not prepare you to be an investor. So people ask me this all the time, and my question is, what's your end goal?
Yeah.
Do you want to list houses and represent buyers? Or do you want to be a landlord? Because having a license, I used to think, and I have a real estate license, I used to think it was going to be the fast track to riches and fame.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
There's not a fast track. There's a slow and steady, and that's in investing.
Before we jump into our rapid fire questions, how can someone find or connect with you?
If you go to whitneynicely.com, there's a bunch of buttons up at the top that'll connect us on Facebook and YouTube and just about everywhere. Or you can just type in Whitney Nicely to your favorite search engine and all sorts of fun stuff pops up.
Let's dive into our rapid fire questions. These are questions we ask every guest on the episode. What is one tip you would give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
The best place to start is by telling somebody.
Okay.
When you put your thoughts and ideas out into the world and then you do it a lot,
Yeah.
people will find you to make those big ideas and dreams happen.
Okay.
So start telling as many people as possible. When I was at that first boot camp in December of 2013, I was so high on life. I was so excited. And I blasted it on Facebook that I was going to buy 10 houses in the next year.
Okay.
That was going to be my goal.
Yeah.
Not even my New Year's resolution, just my goal.
Yeah.
I was going to buy 10 houses. And I'll never forget that when I was talking to my boyfriend that night on the phone, I was telling him all these things that I learned. He said, Whitney, you have church camp mentality. It's never going to happen. Nobody's going to want to do these deals with you. You're living a pipe dream, and you need to give it up and just come back home, go to work, and be happy.
Yeah.
And I basically told him to hold my beer and watch this. And we are married now, but I like to remind him of that every morning and give him a little bit of that for breakfast. So when you tell people your big hopes and dreams,
Yeah.
don't expect everybody to be on board immediately.
Yeah.
Don't expect a cheering squad, but go ahead and tell people and put it on Facebook. Peer pressure is real, and it will happen a lot faster than you think once you put it out there to the world. God will take care of you when you put it out there, right?
That's good.
So it's scary because these are big hopes and dreams that we don't really want to tell anybody.
Right.
But the only way to make it happen is to start telling everybody.
Yeah. What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
I would like this false idea of mortgages and banks and credit to disappear.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Mortgages have only been around for like 100 years, and everybody thinks that they're like written in stone or something. Like, it's not. Your credit is only important if you're going through a bank, but all you're doing when you go through a bank is paying them to allow you to have money.
Yeah.
It's like, my idea of credit is kind of the adult equivalent. If you have bad credit, it's like being put in the corner and your mom telling that you can't come play with other kids until you behave and improve your credit.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Credit, mortgages, the banking system. Ooh, I could poke so many holes in that.
That would be a fun conversation. Maybe we should do that sometime. Just talk about
It's
that.
a hot conversation.
That's for sure. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want to empower women, specifically women, to become real estate investors. I want to be remembered as, the woman leading the charge, leading the army of other women into their financial freedom through real estate investing. And I'll tell you this. I know this is a lightning round, but I've got a great story for this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women need a real estate portfolio for two reasons.
Okay.
Okay, they need this more than men. One reason is statistically, we're going to outlive our mates. I'm going to outlive my husband statistically. My grandmother outlived my grandfather by like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And luckily, my grandfather was a real estate investor. So when she was old and in the nursing home and she had an $8,000 a month bill, he had a rental portfolio that was paying for her to be in a really nice nursing home.
Yeah.
And that's, 2016, 2017 prices.
Yeah.
I have no idea how expensive it will be in 100 years when I'm there.
Yeah.
So we're going to live longer. And since we're living longer, we're going to need money coming in longer.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And 401ks, savings plans, all those things, they don't cut it.
Yeah.
Because they're like a pond. When you take 10,000 out, nothing replenishes it. Eventually, the pond goes dry.
Yeah.
So you have to have a real estate portfolio so that you have a river of money coming in every month.
Yeah.
The second reason is women spend more money. And before anybody jumps up on me about this, if I ask my husband to go to the grocery store and get milk and bread, he comes back with milk and bread.
Yeah.
If I go to the grocery store for milk and bread, I come back with bananas and strawberries and turkey and sandwich bread and lasagna and garlic bread and milk and cereal and chocolate milk and some breakfast bread, and I spend at least $100.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time.
Right.
So if we're going to live longer and we're going to need money longer and we're going to spend more while we're here anyway, we need to have money that comes in every month without us going to clock in to get it.
Yeah.
We just need it to poof, be there.
Yeah. That's good. Who or what inspires you?
My mom. My mom is amazing. And she is so smart, and she's self-taught. She never went to college. She doesn't have any kind of technical degrees, or she has no licenses, no certifications. She's one of the best investors I know, and she is amazing. If I'm having a rough day, I can call her and she'll straighten me out. If I'm having a really good day, I know she'll be there cheering for me, whether it's, I got booked to speak at my alma mater, or whether, I got a new client or I bought a house. It doesn't matter. She's excited for me. That's cool. She will encourage me until the end.
Yeah. What are you currently reading or watching?
Reading, gosh, I've got like 4 books going on right now, but I have been flying to Tampa a lot with my husband. So I've been reading Forbes a lot lately. Yeah. And magazines on flights and things. My favorite book, though, is Miracle in the Mountains. It's about a woman who started a college, and this college owns the most land of any college or university in the world.
Wow.
Miracle in the Mountains. It's my favorite book.
Cool. I'll have to check that out for sure. I end every episode with this final question. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Oh, I want to buy businesses.
Okay.
I've been buying houses and land and apartments, and it's really fun, and I can keep going and doing that. But if you've ever played Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, the goal is to get off of the rat race.
Yeah.
And get into buying businesses and doing bigger and better, badder things. And so I've made that my goal in 2018, to really start looking at some businesses instead of properties, or properties attached to businesses. My love is real estate, so we'll have some real estate in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Whitney, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you about a fascinating industry and just hearing your story. It's such an encouraging story. Thanks for taking time out and sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. This was fun.
Once again, I want to thank today's guest, Whitney Nicely, for taking time out to share her story and adventure into the world of real estate investment. If you want to learn more about Whitney, make sure you swing over to whitneynicely.com, or you can swing on over to jumblethink.com and check the episode notes for links to where you can find Whitney. Our guest on Friday's episode is Steve Lois. He is a speaker, a business expert, and the founder of Qualigence International. Steve has spent over 20 years working in the human resources industry. He's a highly rated speaker and specializes on entrepreneurial best practices and talent management and strategies. He has worked with the leadership teams at Cisco, Starbucks, Whirlpool, Coca-Cola, Miller, Walgreens, and many other incredible Fortune 100 and 500 businesses. He has been featured on Bloomberg, CNN Money, Detroit Free Press, Fortune, and so many other incredible places. Make sure to swing back to check out our episode this Friday with Steve Lois. We are so grateful that you listen to the Jumble Think podcast, and we want to make sure you never miss another episode, or you can go back and check out some of our great episodes from the past. Swing on over to your favorite place to listen to podcasts. That could be iTunes, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, so many other incredible places. Click that subscribe or follow button so that you'll never miss another Jumble Think episode. It has been a really fun Jumble Think episode. I want to thank you for tuning in and really encourage you. Go out there, do something awesome. Make one step, one little tiny step towards that big idea and dream, and start changing the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.